Matilda had died, mad, they said, hearing a flute and following a spirit. Was what they said true? I was ready anyway for that flute. If Mr. Nevinson were right, in due time I'd hear it, for I had touched the manuscript. He had touched it, and he believed that his daughter Jessie, in the process of searching for stamps in the desk drawer in which he'd kept the manuscript, had touched it too. They both heard this spectral flute now. I learnt the significance of all this in a steamer journey to Hood de Vries with Mr. Nevinson, Mrs. Nevinson, and Jessie. Mr. Nevinson had invited me to go there, the site of his company's upriver station, telling me that he wanted me to paint forest scenes for the walls of his company's renovated office in town. But, as he admitted later, this was only a pretext. In fact, he was afraid to go there alone, but under some compulsion to go. We were friends, Mr. Nevinson and I, and we were both interested in the unusual. Knowing this, he got me involved in this weird affair. We had by now, together, read the manuscript with its threat that whoever touched it would have to listen to a dead Dutchman's flute music and join him where he was later. Did Matilda, too, touch that manuscript? I had. I had touched the manuscript, and now we were at Hood de Vries, the place of action, in this story of
My Bones and My Flute.
The river made a soft sucking at the shrubs that bordered the bank, a secretive sibilance that somehow seemed even more remote and lost than the whir and hum of the insects. When I did bring myself to an awareness of it, I felt startled, imagining it to be the hiss of a snake or a rustling of light garments. Almost at once I did feel certain I could hear someone moving in the darkness out there, someone arrayed in silk. Perhaps some ethereal gossamer. I stiffened and peered frowningly into the dense blackness. Then there was a sound in the room behind me, and I started round and saw the dim pyjama-clad figure of Mr. Nevinson appear in the doorway that connected our two rooms. With a quake of relief, I realized that it must have been the sounds of his limbs in contact with the silk of his pyjamas that I had heard. I told him about it, and he grunted and said, yes, he had just changed into his pyjamas. Why hadn't I gotten into mine yet? I was watching fireflies, I told him.
Yes, I like looking at them myself,
he said, and in the starlight that flooded in upon us through the window, I saw him smile. It was very late, near 11. The whole house was in darkness, for the petter plant had been stopped at 10 o'clock, there being no necessity for it to go on to a later hour. The fresh meat we had brought up had been cooked, and the refrigerator did not contain anything of a perishable nature. After listening in to radio music in the sitting room for about an hour after dinner, Mrs. Nevinson and Jessie had retired, and soon after that Mr. Nevinson had called down to Rayburn. Rayburn's room was just beneath the sitting room, being the only room built right down to the ground, and told him to have the petter plant switched off for the night. Leaning out of that window, smoking cigarettes, Mr. Nevinson and I talked for a long while, perhaps until after midnight. We agreed that, from what Rayburn had told us earlier that evening, it appeared that Patwar's woman, Matilda, must also have fallen a victim to the spell of the manuscript.
It's perfectly natural, of course, Mr. Nevinson was saying, that she should have been curious to see what was inside this canister. Very likely she never believed the tale about there being a superstition attached to it. More likely she must have assumed it was a blind of Patwar's to discourage her from opening the canister. She must have thought he used to hoard money in it, and when he died the first thing she did was to satisfy herself on the point.
Yes, I can see that, sir, I said.
But what I want to know is this. What plan of action have you got in mind? I mean, I take it you don't intend to let sit idle and allow events to take their course. Far from that, my boy. You can be sure I came up here with fighting intentions. I'm not going to resign myself to this mystery so tamely. I mean to settle it some way or other. The obvious thing is to find these bones and the flute referred to in the manuscripts, and then see what happens. That's where the snag comes in, of course. I have no idea of the whereabouts of this plantation the writer speaks of. I searched eagerly at Colony House, but the records there proved blank. Couldn't find any name like Wuman as the proprietor of a plantation around the time of the rebellion. Not surprising, really, though. As you know, the records contain strange gaps. The government archivist once told me that the 18th century is his greatest despair so far as records go. Scanty, patchy. Many valuable documents have been lost, especially documents relating to the period around 1763. But then that rebellion itself might have been responsible. Guggenheim, the Dutch governor, burned practically all the documents at Fort Nassau before spiking his guns and retreating downriver. After a silence, he said, "Anyway, tomorrow we'll visit Patwar's cottage and have a look around. Then we'll have a chat with Matilda's sister. She may be able to tell us something helpful. Another thing is to try to trace who this Indian fellow could be who made a present of that canister to Patwar. If we could find him, he might be able to tell us where he in turn got it from. That is, if he's alive," he added with, I thought, a significant note of grimness. From the river came a bubbling as though a palm berry had fallen into the water, or it might have been a fish. When the sound died away, the silence fanned down upon us once more, heavy and charged with that waiting quality characteristic of the jungle in these parts. There was no wind. The air seemed to hang like dissolved curtains in space. The river lurked like a sullen enemy, which at any instant might send black, sluggish tentacles groping towards us through the dark. From upstream there came a low, gruff barking, and I found myself stiffening, for I knew that no dog could utter such a sound. It was too powerful and harsh. "Baboons," Mr. Nevinson murmured. "This is your first trip into the jungle. That's why they sound to you so impressive. Well, I think it's time for bed." I agreed with him, though for some reason we neither of us made a move. We continued to lean out of the window. There was real fascination in the night, a dense aliveness and intelligence, a watching calm. The jungle, silhouetted like a ragged lace edge against the starry sky, held an indigo smile in its wet depths, and the occasional chirp of a frog concealed a chuckle that might mean anything. The river's soft sibilance now and then took on a derisive quality. From out of its secretive gloom, it seemed deliberately to breathe up into our faces a humid vegetable miasma, expressive of its deep antagonism towards us. The fireflies, engaged all the while in their deadly, silent dance, heightened the vigilant aspect of the dark, as though within the core of their cool incandescence they knew the meaning of this night, the hidden motive behind the jungle's smile, the message the frog kept chirping at intervals, the reason for the river's sly animosity. The barking of the baboon ceased as abruptly as it had begun. The insect chorus wove a net around us. Then the shrubs at the edge of the bank rustled sharply, and after the rustle had faded, the silence swooped back into place, swaying and moist once more, scented with the musty old leaf scent of the centuries. I had the sensation of being able to see and hear and touch the essence of the scene, the night itself, the intimate spirit of trees and water. The insect humming, whirled, spiraled, made a purple spinning. I jerked my head aside, aware that a tenseness had come into Mr. Nevinson's manner. I heard him utter a murmured exclamation. "What is it, sir?" I asked. He withdrew from the window and looked round slowly without replying.
In this instant my trance of introspection vanished. I knew it was actually happening. I stood and listened. There could be no doubt. It had nothing of the imaginary about it. It was a flute, clear, leisurely, distant. A tuneless, wandering trickle of treble notes coming out from the trees that stood so still in the night. I had heard the flute. I was to hear it again and again before long, as Matilda no doubt did, in this terrible experience I've come to call
my bones and my flute.